You've heard of the Gallowglass, but do you know the 5 clans whose names were whispered with fear across medieval Ireland? These weren't just mercenaries, they were dynasties. Each clan carved out their own legend with axes and swords, but their true power came from something deeper: strategic alliances, maritime dominance, and an unbreakable warrior code. Today, we are ranking them, from first to deadliest. And one of these clans holds a title you've never heard of, a rank so high it made them untouchable in Gaelic society. Number 5. The MacRorys. They were the first. In 1259, a Scottish princess brought a very unusual dowry to her Irish husband: 160 heavily armored warriors. These weren't ordinary soldiers, they were the MacRorys, commanded by Alan MacRorys.
Here's why that matters. Before the MacRorys arrived, the Anglo-Norman invasion of Ireland seemed unstoppable. They'd conquered 2/3 of the island in just decades. But these Scottish shock troops changed everything. The MacRorys stiffened Irish resistance so effectively that the invasion ground to a halt. For the first time, the Irish had warriors who could stand toe-to-toe with Norman knights. And here's the kicker: there's evidence they were fighting in Ireland even earlier. A MacRory leader, called the King of Argyll, was killed at the Battle of Ballyshannon in 1247, 12 years before the famous dowry. The MacRorys didn't just fight in Irish history, they started it. Number 4. The MacCabes. And their title alone tells you everything. Arriving in Ireland in the mid-1300s, they quickly became the elite forces for the O'Reilly and O'Rourke lordships in Breffny. But they weren't hired muscle. Their chief held a formal rank, Constable of the 2 Breffnys. That's a position of genuine military authority, not just command over their own clan, but strategic control over entire regions.
Even their name screams warrior identity. MacCabe likely comes from the Gaelic word cabba, meaning helmet or cape. They were literally named after their battle gear. In 1460, when their chief Henry MacCabe died, his funeral procession included 280 Gallowglass, each one carrying a battle axe. That's not just a show of numbers, that's a demonstration of absolute clan loyalty in an age when loyalty was currency. Their motto? Ort vincere, ort mori. Either conquer or die. Therefore, there was never a middle ground with the MacCabes. You won or you didn't come home. Number 3 is actually 2 clans: the MacDowells and MacDougalls. Different origins, Galloway and Argyll, but Irish records used their names interchangeably because they fought the same way. The MacDougalls married into Irish royalty in 1260 when their chief's daughter wed Brian O'Neill, the last High King of Ireland. That's top-tier political power. But things got complicated. Sir John of Lorne, the 5th chief of Clan MacDougal, sided with the English against Robert the Bruce. He operated as an admiral, using bases in Ireland to strike at Scotland. His own clansmen became weapons in a war against their homeland. The MacDougalls, meanwhile, were the quintessential freelancers. Irish records show them fighting alongside and sometimes against other Gallowglass clans like the MacDonalds. Alexander MacDowell was their legend. The annals describe him as a champion never before overcome in battle. In 1419, he was finally killed alongside his 2 sons. That's the Gallowglass death, undefeated until the very end, dying with your sons in battle. No retreat, no surrender. Number 2. The MacSweeneys. If you picture a Gallowglass clan, you're picturing them. They were one of the first families to settle in Ireland, granted lands in Donegal by the O'Donnell dynasty, but they didn't stay small. They expanded into 3 powerful branches: MacSweeney of Fenard, MacSweeney of Doe, and MacSweeney of Bonner. This gave them control over vast territories and fortresses like the legendary Doe Castle. Their war cry was Battalia Abu, the noble staff victorious, a direct reference to the battle axe that defined their entire identity. But here's what makes them archetypal. One MacSweeney castle has an inscribed stone inviting all travelers to free entertainment. Warriors, yes, but also bound by Gaelic hospitality codes.
A 16th-century tomb effigy of a MacSweeney of Banach still survives. You can see exactly what they looked like in full battle gear: chainmail, axe, and that unmistakable warrior stance. Their legacy didn't die in Ireland. Brigadier General Thomas William Sweeney, a one-armed MacSweeney descendant, fought in the Mexican-American War, the U.S. Civil War, and even participated in the Fenian invasion of Canada. The MacSweeneys weren't just archetypal Gallowglass, they were Gallowglass across centuries and continents. Number 1. The MacDonalds. And their power came from something no other clan could match. They were a maritime force, with deep roots in Scotland and the Hebrides. They controlled the Irish Sea. Therefore, they could transport, supply, and reinforce Gallowglass armies at will. That's not just military strength. That's logistical dominance. In medieval warfare, the side that can feed, arm, and replace its troops wins. Around 1425, the MacDonalds became the hereditary military body for the O'Neill kings of Tyrone, the most powerful dynasty in Ulster. That pact lasted over 200 years.
In 1569, when Turlough Lunaic O'Neill married Lady Agnes Campbell, her dowry was staggering: at least 1,200 Gallowglass fighters, most tied to the MacDonald sphere of influence. 1,200, that's not a clan, that's an army. The MacDonalds integrated so completely into Irish society that their name, in all its forms, remains one of the most common surnames in Ireland today. The MacDonalds of Knocknacloy in County Tyrone were a particularly deadly branch of this dynasty. They didn't just serve the kingmakers, they were the kingmakers. You didn't rule Ulster without MacDonald steel behind you. 5 clans, 5 different paths to power, but one shared identity: Gallowglass. Warriors who turned the tide of Irish history. From the first arrivals to the kingmakers, these weren't just soldiers for hire. They were legends forged in blood and iron. Which clan would you want at your back? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories of how mortals became legends, hit that subscribe button.